I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I am a 6-year PhD candidate in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have another Victober video for you, and this is actually inspired by a video that Katie from Books and Things, one of the hosts, put out right at the beginning of the month. And that was her recommendation for every year of the Victorian period video. And of course I got thinking, I'm like, have I read a book from every year of the Victorian period? The short answer is no, I haven't. But obviously I needed to discover this, so I made a spreadsheet, because what else would I do? I love a good spreadsheet. The Victorian period officially lasted from 1837, when Victoria took the throne, to 1901, when she passed away. Now, in academia, we kind of stretch it a little bit in either direction and tend to start teaching the Victorian period starting around 1830, and like it can kind of go until 1905, thereabouts. However, for the purposes of this video, I am going to be using the 1837 to 1901 definition. So what I found when I did my spreadsheet is that I have read at least one book from 51 of those years, leaving me with 13 years that I had read no books in. And I will now show you the spreadsheet if I can figure out how to record my screen. So as you can see, I have the author, the title, the publication year, and then the type. So novel, nonfiction, poetry, whatever. It's mostly novels, shocking. And then in this other sheet, I have actually done out the decades and all of that. So the later years I'm doing great on. The 60s, I have at least one from every year. Mostly more than one. I'm also doing real good with the 90s. The 80s and the 50s, there's only 1 year from each that I need to fill in. The 70s, I have a few years in there. 1900, I need one for, and then we go over to the 30s and the 40s, and it's abysmal. Yeah, I mean, once we get to the late 40s, I'm doing great because of the Bronte sisters, but the early 40s are rough going. Really, really rough going, as you can see. I've got Tennyson's Lady of Shalott for 1842, because that is when the revised edition was published, and that is the edition that we usually read. And then I've got, I think, A Christmas Carol in 1843. And then the 30s, the only one I have is Oliver Twist in 1838. Considering all that, I was like, well, now I need to find a book for each of the missing years. And so I decided to find them and then make this video about it. So these are the books that I would like to read from the 13 missing years that I have of the Victorian era. Now, I was not originally going to do it quite the way I ended up doing it, because I just decided to make my life harder, as usual. So I tried to go without repeating an author, and I did manage it. It was rough sometimes, but I managed it. And I have quite a few new to me authors on here, especially in the 30s and 40s. So let's jump into what these books are. From 1837, I have The Vicar of Wrexhill by Frances Milton Trollope. This is kind of a critique of evangelicalism, involving a shady evangelical minister that comes to town and is like trying to marry a wealthy widow. It sounds really interesting. I do have a book by Frances Milton Trollope already that I have not read. That's The Widow Barnaby, which is somewhere up there. But that was from a year that I already had a book for, so I was like, oh. And Katie recommended The Vicar of Wrexhill, so I I trust her judgment. I will probably be reading The Widow Barnaby first because I already own it. There's no time frame that I want to read these books in. It's just going to be like maybe a year, if that. Who knows? Who knows? I'll probably do an update when I've managed it all, but this one does sound really good, and I'm excited to read anything by Frances Milton Trollope because she is the mother of Anthony Trollope. 1839, that's when The Widow Barnaby was published, but I had already started a book that's from 1839 that I am currently reading, and that is Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. I am about a quarter of the way through it right now and really enjoying it. This is about two sisters who come from Birmingham to live in the country town of Deerbrook with their cousins, and everything that happens. It is very reminiscent of Jane Austen, or even something like Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I haven't read, but I've heard is very similar, and even a bit to Middlemarch by George Eliot. So I'm really enjoying this, and it checks off a box very early on for me, so yay! And now we get to 1840, and this was rough. People, this was rough. It's like, oh my God. It's like nobody that I wanted to read anything by was writing anything in 1840. I like the mid-Victorians. The early Victorians, other than Dickens, and I guess I've read Thackeray. And the Brontes, I guess, technically count because they're the later 40s. But like the really early stuff, I'm like, I haven't read anything and I don't know anyone. So I finally went with Prefermont, or My Uncle the Earl by Catherine Gore. Now, Catherine Gore was a Silver Fork novelist, which I think mainly means like kind of writing about fashionable life. She was also quite prolific. She had 3 books that came out in 1840 that I had to choose from. I chose based on title because I can't find summaries of them anywhere. And Amazon did at least have a copy of this that I could like sample online. And so I like read the first page and was like, yeah, sure, why not? But I'm always happy to find a new woman writer, and I'm hoping to really enjoy Catherine Gore. For 1841, we have Night and Morning by Edward Bulwer Lytton, who was the mentor of Mary Elizabeth Braddon. He was also in the Silver Fork genre. So this was interesting. Night and Morning, some places were saying it was published in 1841, other places were saying 1845. I was like, which is it? So I had to go to my library and find a biography of him that had a timeline, and it was indeed first published in 1841. There was another edition that came out in 1845 that had a preface to the 1845 edition, and that is the one you can usually find a copy of, but it was first published in 1841, so we are going with that. I know that Katie read this one and she said it was pretty good. I don't really know what it's about other than that. It seems from the few descriptions I can find, it's something to do with inheritance struggles, which is always a good time. And I'm excited to read something by the man who Braddon really looked up to and wrote a lot of letters to. For 1844, I have The Luck of Barry Lyndon by William Makepeace Thackeray. This is about a member of the Irish gentry trying to become part of the English aristocracy. And that's all I really know about it. It does have a Wikipedia page though, thank God, unlike some of these others. So I had a little more information. I feel like this never gets talked about. I'd never heard of it. The only Thackeray books I ever hear anyone talking about, even as a Victorianist in academia, are Vanity Fair and Pendennis. Like, for all I had known, he hadn't written anything else because no one ever talks about it. So I'm interested to read this one. and see what it's like. And apparently it was adapted into a film by Stanley Kubrick in 1975. Fascinating. For 1845, I have The Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens. This is one of his Christmas stories, and I will actually be reading it this December because I am participating in Katie's Christmas Dickens read-along. I didn't get to participate in the Mega Dickens read-along. It just never worked out, so this is my way of participating. And I've actually only read A Christmas Carol out of his, I think, 5 Christmas books. 5, 6, I don't remember. So I'm interested to get to this one. I don't know what it's really about other than I've briefly looked at the Wikipedia page, yay for Wikipedia, and it's focused on a family whose name is weird because it's Dickens. And I don't really want to know anything other than that. I kind of just want to go in blind. I could have just filled up the 40s with Dickens if I'd really wanted to, except for 1840, because nothing in 1840. Oh my God, rough year. But I decided to make my life hard and only pick one by each author. I also think this is a good moment to mention that for the novels that are serialized, I am going by the date that they were put out in volume form. So I know later on we will get to one that was serialized from like 1871 to 1873 and then put out in 3 volumes in 1873, and that is counting just for 1873 because that is usually the date that we put the publication date as in academia when we're citing it, unless we're specifically looking at one installment or something, which I've never seen anyone do. So I thought I'd put it in here just because Dickens serialized everything. Although The Cricket on the Hearth was a Christmas story, so it came out, at Christmas. For 1846, I have finally another one in physical form. And this is poems by Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell, which are Charlotte, Emily, and Anne Bronte. Now I have this copy that it has, it's got The Professor, it's got a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, and then it has poems by all 3 of them. I am assuming that the poems in here are the poems that they published in their little volume of poetry, but I am going to double check that before reading it or anything. But I wanted something nice to hold up, and I do have this lovely 1949 Heather edition. So I have read Emily's poems, but I have never read any by Charlotte or Anne. So this will be very interesting for me. And we're back to not having a physical book. For 1851, I have Marion Withers by Geraldine Dewsbury. This is an industrial novel focused on 2 children who it sounds like were at the workhouse, and one of them ends up working in a factory. I don't know much about it other than that. I think Katie read it, but I'm not sure. I know that she read The Half-Sisters by Geraldine Dewsbury and really enjoyed that. But that came out in a year that I already had something for, so. I don't know. I'm always excited to see a new woman writer and try her out, so it should be good. We're jumping quite a bit to 1870, and for this I have Man and Wife by Wilkie Collins. I just finished No Name and loved it, and Man and Wife was the next one that I wanted to read anyway, so it worked out perfectly that it was in a year I was missing. This is a sensation novel, really looking at marriage laws, particularly in Scotland, apparently. And I don't know much other than that about it, and I don't want to know much other than that about it, because I think Wilkie Collins is best if you go in blind. I didn't read the introduction of No Name until after I finished it, and that was definitely the correct choice. 1973 is The Eustace Diamonds by Anthony Trollope. So this is the one that was published serially from 1871 to 1873. This is the 3rd book in the Palliser series, and it is actually the one that sounds the most interesting to me. It is focused on a woman who is a fortune hunter, and I don't remember her name. Lizzie Greystock. And she marries a guy who dies soon, and she becomes a wealthy widow, and she has this diamond necklace? Yeah, diamond necklace that technically belongs to the family, so she shouldn't get to keep because it should go to her son, who's the heir to the estate, but she doesn't want to give it up. So, I don't know. It sounds like fun to me. She kind of sounds like a Becky Sharp character who I really like, and it just sounds like a good time. For 1878, we have another one that I actually have. Yay! This is The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. I actually started this quite a while ago during my master's degree because I was thinking I could potentially use it, and then I decided for my dissertation, then decided not to, and I never finished it even though I was liking it. So this follows Eustacia Vi in the small community of Egdon Heath and her deciding to marry a guy named Clym Yeobright. Why does he always have these names? This man. But it's Thomas Hardy. I'm sure it won't end happily because it's Thomas Hardy. But it does sound really good, and it kind of gives off like kind of witchy vibes. I think if I remember correctly, there are some people in the town that think Eustacia is like a witch or something. So it seems fun. The next one is for 1881. This is The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. This follows the American heiress Isabel Archer and her time mostly abroad in England and in Italy. Now, Henry James is always so interesting because he's born in America. He moved to England and spent a lot of time over in England. And he tends to write about this kind of transatlantic topics of like Americans coming over to England or Europeans going over to America. So it's like, can we consider him Victorian? I do, personally, because as a critic, he was looking at a lot of these Victorian novels and being very rude about some of my women writers. Not over fond of him. But I've got like 4 books by him that I need to read still that I own, but none of them worked out for any of the years. So we're going with The Portrait of a Lady, which honestly is the one that sounds most interesting to me by him. I just haven't had a chance to buy it. So the one American that I say can be included in the Victorians because he did spend most of his time over in England and was involved with a lot of the British novelists over there and was critiquing all of them. So he counts. Now we get to the last year that I have one missing from, and that is 1900. And for this, I decided to go with Eleanor by Mary Augusta Ward, who published under her married name, Mrs. Humphrey Ward. I know nothing about this novel. I can find nothing on it. I did find, like, a sample on Amazon, but I can't find a summary at all. So I read Marcella by Ward a few years ago and enjoyed it, so I am hoping to also enjoy Eleanor. So those are the books that I want to read from the 13 years of the Victorian period that I have not read any books from. Let me know down in the comments below, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What years are you missing for completing the full Victorian period? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon for another Victober video. Bye.